my name is Shelby. Welcome back to A Little Literary Love. Glad you all are here with me. Today's video is going to be my April mid-month wrap-up. So just want to start off the bat saying if I'm wiggling around a lot in this video, I am rocking my baby to sleep. And this is like the only time that I have to film, and I was in a mood to film, so we're just gonna go with it. I started the month off pretty slow again. I think I read the same amount that I read in the first half of March, which is like 7 books. I was just not really feeling the books that I was reading so far this month. I DNF'd like 2 or 3 books that I started, so that didn't really help my numbers. I also just wasn't really in a big reading mood at the first half of this month, so I'm really hoping that the latter half like picks up on that. And a lot of these books aren't super memorable to me, so hopefully this will be a pretty quick video because I don't know that I'm gonna have a ton to say about any of these books, but yeah. So the first one that I read for the month of April is going to be Damable Grace by Tillie. This is the next book in the Hades Hangman series. This is book number 5. This is about AK, who is a member of the Hades Hangman embassy, and then this is about our heroine, who is Phoebe. That's who it is. And Phoebe is Lila's biological sister. Lila was the heroine from the second book of this series, and she has been taken by this group of Nazi, like neo-Nazi extremists. And she's been taken by them, and they don't really know what's happening to her, but Lila wants her sister back. So AK and a group of the Hades Hangman members go and try to rescue her and find out where she's at. So they infiltrate where this Nazi group is keeping them, and they find out they're keeping a lot of other women there too. So then they're able to rescue Phoebe, but this whole story is both AK and Phoebe dealing with like their past trauma, because AK has some like PTSD almost from some things in his past. He was a Marine, and he's got a lot of like trauma from that, and then also some other things that have happened to him. And then Phoebe is also dealing with everything that happened to her. She was like, they drugged her while she was there, so he had to try to like get her off of the drugs, but then she was trying to trade that for other addictions, and it was mostly them together trying to help each other work through those things. This was a lot more steamier than the other books previously in the series, mostly because Phoebe was trained as a person. When she was in the cult, she was trained to seduce men to come to the cult and join the cult. So she is used to having sex and using her sex appeal to have sex with men, like I said, to get them to join their cult. So she does this against AK a few times to kind of get what she wants. So this, I would say the steam of this was more like medium to high, whereas most of the others I would put them more around medium, borderline medium to high, somewhere around there. And this does have a lot of trigger warnings in it. There is drugs. Like I said, she was put on drugs while she was with these Nazi group. There is definite racism from this Nazi group. There's a lot of abuse, and torture and murder. All those things are in this. So I give this 5 stars. I really enjoyed this. It was very good. I'm enjoying a lot of these books from the Hades Hangman series. Then the next one that I read is going to be Sordid by Nikki Sloane. I picked this one up because, like I said, the Hades Hangman series has more like medium high steam, and I was really wanting to read something that had a lot of steam to it. I wanted high steam, so I picked this one up. This is about our heroine, and she's kind of like a goody two-shoes, and her roommate gets her to finally like go out to this party, and I believe it's a Halloween party because they're like all dressed up, and this guy is there, and I think he was like a TA in one of her former like college classes because they're in college, and she's had a huge crush on him, and she starts talking to him, and they kind of have some drinks, and he ends up forcing himself on her, kind of. Well, I mean, not kind of, like he does. There is definite non-consensual sex happening, but his family is part of the mafia. So, you know, in the next morning, he kind of asked her, like, what do you remember? What happened? And she says, I remember everything. I told you to stop and you didn't. So he decides to kidnap her because he can't have her going to the police to say anything about what happened because their family doesn't need the police on them. And it kind of ensues from there. There's this captor-captive kind of situation until eventually at the end it does have an HEA and they do fall in love. But I didn't really care for this. I did give it 3 stars. It wasn't the worst thing I've ever read, but I really just didn't like the non-consensual sex that was in here, which isn't like a huge like no-no for me, but it was in here, and so if a book has it, I need some other things to take place for me to be okay with it, and that just didn't really happen in this book. The biggest thing was I feel like our hero needed to grovel a lot more than what he did, and then he's also training her to be his submissive, and the type of submissive he was wanting her to be is just not something that I'm really into. It was more, to me, it leaned more towards like total dominant submissive or even borderline like master slave. I know not everybody's going to agree with that, but that's just kind of how it came across to me, and I'm not a big fan of that. So but the steam on this was high, so I mean, I guess I kind of got what I wanted from that, sort of. But yeah, this was just not my favorite. Then I read Lady Isabella's Guide, or Lady Isabella's Scandalous Marriage, which this is the 2nd book in the Mackenzie's and McBride series. I read the 1st book of this series last month, so I wanted to continue on with the series. This is about Mac, who is Ian's brother. Ian is our hero from the 1st book. And so Mac and Isabella, they are married, but they are kind of estranged. They are basically separated. They no longer talk to each other. I don't think they've talked to each other in like 3 years, but they're still married technically. Isabella and Mac got married very scandalously because they got married the day after Isabella debuted into society, and she was like, you know, how they debut and they're looking for suitors. Well, they got married, she met him, and they got married the next day. So, but this is about, they actually start talking to each other again because Mac is a very famous painter, and Isabella, I believe she's going to like an art gallery or something, and she sees that somebody has been forging his paintings and has been painting new things, and putting it off as his when he actually didn't paint them. So they get together to try to figure out like who was doing this. And then there's some other things that happen. I listened to this on audiobook, so like the details on this book were a little bit fuzzy for me, but I know there was like some things that they think that that person that's forging his paintings is also kind of after Isabella, so he has to kind of stick around her to protect her, and they are also kind of trying to sort out their marriage. So this is, I would consider this like a second chance romance slash kind of marriage in trouble. There you also kind of find out why they separated and weren't talking to each other. This was high steam. They are very sexually attracted to one another, which I did enjoy that bit of it. Overall, I ended up giving this 3 stars. I think it didn't really help that I was listening to it on audio and it took me a while to finish this because I was only listening to it in like little spurts. But yeah, so, oh, and then there are trigger warnings for miscarriage in this book. So then I read Hide or Die, which is the first book in the Secret Pack series by Ember Blaze. This is an Omegaverse series. So I picked this one up because I was hoping that this would give me the kind of steam, the kind of high steam that I was looking for. And I was very disappointed by this. The setup for this was great. So this is, like I said, it's an Omegaverse kind of world, except in this world we have our alphas and omegas are kind of in hiding and suppressed. They are also persecuted. This is very much a beta controlled world, and betas think that omegas and alphas are unnatural, so they get persecuted for this. They are forced to undergo like body modification, like surgeries. They are put on like drugs to suppress like their like hormones and pheromones, and it's just not a very great kind of world. So our heroine of this book is an omega, and she is kind of an omega in hiding. She takes these black market drugs to suppress her like heats and her pheromones so that nobody will know that she's an omega. And she is actually an ambassador and is pretty high up in like the political realm because she's wanting to try to change all the policies and help omegas and alphas out. And her like partner, sort of, they're like friends, whatever, is also an omega, and he's also kind of in hiding, even though he was found out like in his past. He has a lot of trauma from his past because he was taken as a slave, and he was forced to go undergo body modification type surgeries. So anyway, so they are going to this like summit kind of thing to discuss different policies, and on their way there, their car gets like ambushed and they are held captive by this beta supremacist group, and they have like a team made up of mostly alphas that were kind of their security team, and one of them also gets taken. So they are locked, and there's our heroine and her omega partner, and then one of the alpha security members is like locked in this cell, and she doesn't have access to her suppressant drugs, and she ends up going into her heat, and they're kind of freaked out about this. So like I said, the premise of this I thought was fantastic. I thought, you know, they're forced together, that forced proximity kind of trope. I was like, okay, we're gonna get some really steamy kind of scenes in here. It's no Megaverse. There's the whole security team of alphas and her friend who's an Omega. And I was like, we're gonna get, it's reverse harem. It's gonna be great. No. I was very disappointed. This I would consider like low to medium steam. There's not a ton of sex in this, and especially like the sex that is in this isn't until like the very end of this book, and I was just not expecting that. That was not what I was wanting when I was going into this, so I didn't really care for that. It also had some things that were a little bit more far out there for Megaverse, at least for me. This does feature impreg, so Omegas can get pregnant, which is what her Omega friend, some of his trauma was, because they took out his ability to carry a child. They just like took that out. Also, usually Omegas end up having like multiple babies, so most Omegas have more than 2 like nipples. So he had like more than 2 nipples, and they surgically removed those from him, which that was hard. Like I could see all of that was like awful, and I could just see that be a terrible experience and like traumatizing. But it was just like their anatomy was just, it was different. So it wasn't like a total turn off for me. I just want to put that out there if you're aware, because I know not everybody is into some of those things. So yeah, so I was 3-star. I don't really plan on continuing this series, just because I'm sure, I would assume the next book in this series is going to have more steam to it, but since I was already so let down with this one, I just don't want to risk it and take that chance. Then I read Little Slice of Hell by Clio Evans. This is a paranormal romance. This is a novella. This is the first book in the Creature Cafe series, which I think is just a series of novellas. And this whole series is about this barista who owns a coffee shop, and he likes to matchmake. And apparently he's better at it than Cupid. And I remember for this book he said that he actually even set up Cupid with Cupid's. Well, I don't know if it actually says that Cupid is a guy, but with Cupid's like forever. So he sets up our one hero. This is a male romance too, with one of our heroes who is human, and our other hero is a succubus. Or not a succubus, that's female, an incubus. And yeah, so this is just them getting together and having some kinky sex. I give this 3.5 stars. This was okay. It's very much insta-love, like very insta-love, and I'm not the biggest fan of insta-love, so that's part of why I dropped the rating on this. There are some trigger warnings for some past assault / trauma, something that happened to the human male. The steam on this is very high. I think I will probably continue this series. Their kinks in this weren't like my forte, but I really enjoyed Clio Evans' writing. I thought they wrote this really well. It was just, like I said, the kinks were not my biggest thing, and then the insta-love aspect of it, which may be more of just my kind of thing and just wasn't for me, but yeah, it was pretty good. Then I read The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata. I read Culty last year and absolutely loved it, so I wanted to read some more Mariana Zapata this year. This is about Vanessa, and she is the personal assistant to Aiden, who is the big like hotshot football star. He is known as the Wall of Winnipeg because he is from Winnipeg, Canada, I think. And he's like, he's on the defense. So he's like a wall. So that's why what he's known for. And he's a bit of an asshole to her. And she finally gets fed up and decides she's had enough. And she quits her job. And then a little bit later, Aiden comes to her and is like begging her to take her job back, and she keeps refusing. And then he comes to her and wants to marry her because since he's from Canada, his green card expires and he's gonna have to go back to Canada, and he doesn't want to. So he's like, hey, you should marry me so that I can stay in the country with you, or stay in this country. So they ended up getting married. It's a marriage convenience kind of thing. And then I feel like I'm discovering what is on par for Mariana Zapata, who seems like she is the queen of slow burn romances, because this was a very slow burn. But they do eventually get together in the end. And I give this 4 stars. I thought this was really cute. I did really enjoy this story. I didn't enjoy it as much as Colty, because Colty was like a 5-star read. It was so good. I loved it so much. This one I just didn't like as much as that, but I still really enjoyed it. Some of the things why I didn't necessarily enjoy it as much was the heroine kind of annoyed me at times. I felt like to me, it was pretty obvious that Aiden had feelings for her and liked her, but she just kept blowing those things off, like the certain like little signs saying, oh, well, like as she's starting to fall in love with him, because she's like, oh, this is just an agreement, you know, that's nothing more than that. He can't have feelings for me. He doesn't like me that way, blah, blah, blah. So that kind of annoyed me. But overall, I did really enjoy it. And the steam on this was definitely medium, because it takes like basically the entire book to get to some steam. So there's that. And then the last book that I read for the first half of April is going to be Locked Up Liars by Elle Thorpe. And this is the first book in her St. View Prison series. This is going to be a reverse harem, at least in the series. I'm currently like continuing to read the books in the series, but this is about May. At the very beginning of this book, she kind of gets together with her sister's ex-boyfriend. Like, they don't really do anything, but she is attracted to him and has had a crush on him for a while. And they're out and with her friends too, and she's drunk, so he walks her home, makes sure she's, you know, gets home safely, and then they keep talking and they end up falling asleep at her home. And then when they wake up the next morning, he is in her sister's bed and there's blood everywhere and she is dead. So he gets accused of murdering her sister and is sent to prison. And she knows that he didn't do it just because of how his character is, that he just wouldn't do that kind of thing. So she, in this book, is just trying to get him out of prison and get him, like, she gets him a lawyer, and then she gets a job at the prison so that she can see him. She is a teacher, so she gets a teaching job at the prison, teaching all these inmates to hopefully get their like GED. And like I said, this is going to turn into a reverse harem between her and the guy who's accused, and the lawyer that she gets for him, and then one of the guards at the prison. This I would consider like a medium steam, and then I think the next few books are gonna be more high steam, because we only really get like a sexual kind of scene with her and one of the guys in this book. It's kind of like slowly building up to her with the 3 guys. There are trigger warnings for death of a loved one in this, because her sister gets murdered And yeah, I gave this 4 stars. I enjoyed the setup for this, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens in the next few books of this. So yeah, so that's the last book that I read for the first half of April. Stay tuned if you want to see the, you know, what I read for the rest of April. That'll be posted in May sometime at the end of April. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up button on it. And if you want to see more videos from me, make sure you subscribe. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye guys.